Welcome to the Camera Shake podcast, episode 34. Today we have another special guest on the show, but before we get into that, let me just say a few things. If you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, please head over to YouTube. If you can, search for Camera Shake podcast. We need 13 more subscribers to hit 100, which, it makes us a very small podcast. But unfortunately, YouTube allows you to custom name your YouTube channel when you hit 100 subscribers. So we're very close, and with your help, hopefully we're going to make it. So head over to YouTube. If you're not watching this on YouTube already, and of course, if you're subscribed already, don't worry about it. But if you're not, hit that subscribe button. That'd be super awesome. Also, we are now on Instagram, believe it or not. So you can look us up on Instagram. It's at Camera Shake Podcast. We're also on Twitter, believe it or believe it not. Have you ever been on Twitter?
No, I haven't. No, I had an egg photo for a little while once when I was about 17.
Are you on Twitter, Sean? You are on Twitter.
I am indeed, yeah. I'm on Twitter at the moment. It's I'm not on it so much, but it works. I want to sort of involve it in more to what I do, but we'll see. Small steps.
Cool. So if you're on Twitter, you can find us at Shake Camera for some reason. That's our Twitter handle. But check us out there. And also, lastly, if you are the one person listening to us in Colorado Springs, please get in touch. You can send us a message. It'd be super awesome to find out who you actually are. Colorado Springs pops up on the map. Super interesting. But get in touch. You can send us an email on camerashakepodcast@gmail.com or just hit us up on Facebook. Again, facebook.com/camerashakepodcast, blah, blah, blah. Just send us a message on that. That'd be super awesome because we're always trying to connect with listeners and find out what you're up to and where you're listening to this podcast from. So that being said, without further ado, let's get into episode number 34. Please welcome Sean Lewthwaite on the show today. Sean, how's it going? You okay?
I'm not doing too bad. Yourself?
Hanging in there?
Just about, yeah. Busy days, but
yeah, still waiting for the snow to happen here, but we'll see if it happens this year. It happened last year, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Well, because you're not actually in the UK. You're over in Sweden, right?
I'm in Stockholm, Sweden. I've been over here since 2008 now. It's been a lot of fun. Still enjoying it. So yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun.
Awesome.
I moved over from London in 2008.
Cool. We'll get straight into the photography. So Sean, you're a portrait photographer.
That's correct.
Of some incredible standard, I would say.
Thank you very much.
And I want to talk to you about your portrait photography work. And you're also a headshot photographer, but your background is in graphic design, I understand.
It is in graphic design. I graduated from Cardinal College in Glasgow in 96, I think it was. Moved down to London for 14 years, worked for the BBC, Thomson Reuters. Then when I moved over to Stockholm, I started doing street photography. And it sort of went from there. Got my first corporate headshot gig, really enjoyed that. But I found working with bankers and stuff, they're not really into talking as much. So I moved over to finding actors to shoot, which is a bit more interesting. So
how's your Swedish?
Inte så bra. Yeah. No, it's. I understand. I can read it perfectly fine. Understand it. I have actually had sessions where I'll speak English and the person will speak Swedish, and we have a session like that, and it works. We can communicate. It just can sound a bit strange with me speaking English and them speaking Swedish, but it works. That's the main thing.
The only thing I know in Swedish is jag vill ha en värmeaggregat I kylskåpet.
Okay, you'll have something in the fridge.
Yeah. Or have a radiator in the fridge.
No.
Makes sense. Think about it.
Yeah, the grammar is a bit different from English grammar or English grammar, but it works. It works. That's the main thing.
How did you end up in Sweden?
Yeah, I moved over to Sweden. I met a Swedish girl online, and we started speaking to each other. And one thing led to the other. 12 visits later, I moved over to Stockholm in November 2008. So I've been here for quite a few years now. Now married. So life's good. Life's good. The photography's taken off really quite nicely. So
yeah. So you started with street photography, did you say? In Stockholm?
I did. Yeah, it was. I started off doing street photography, not with the best of cameras. It was a Fuji Finepix S5600, so it was like a bridge camera.
Mhm.
The shutter speed was terrible, but I managed to get some good shots if the people didn't move. One thing led to another. I started doing some corporate headshots. Then one day I was like, I need to find something else to shoot. So I went onto Facebook and put in Actors Stockholm, came up with Actors Studio Stockholm, local town quite close to us. They got in contact with me. The teacher was an American teacher. And he said, yeah, great, let's go around, come around here, and you can start shooting some of the students. And it went from there, basically. So it's really good. It's evolved since then as well. So it was good fun.
Great. I first saw your work on Instagram.
Yes.
Quite some time ago. I mean, this goes back probably
it's quite
a few years or something. And
it is, yeah.
And the thing was, like, I think at the time I was actually relatively new to Instagram. I was looking through different, portrait photographers' accounts and stuff just to kind of get some inspiration and to look at some stuff. And there's the thing that's always really stood out about your images, to the point where I don't even have to read who it's by. I can see, like, your picture pops up, I know it's yours. That's it. It's like, it's that.
Yeah, that's quite high praise.
Yeah, but it's that much of a personal style. How would you describe your kind of portrait style to somebody who hasn't seen your work yet?
I think for me, my style, I sort of followed Peter Hurley on Instagram, on the internet and YouTube. And his styles of portraits are absolutely amazing. But they are very much, when I started following, very much American, like white backgrounds, quite a lot of, not editing as such, but they just seem to be too perfect for the European market, especially Swedish market. They very much like them to be realistic headshots. So basically, the only thing I'm going to edit off the face, if someone's got a pimple on the cheek or on the nose, I'll just Photoshop that off. So, but I want to sort of describe them as very cinematic type portraits. I shoot landscape purely because that's how casting directors get to see what the actors are going to look like on screen. So there is method to how I shoot them. I used to shoot with strobe, but that was a bit too clean cut for me. Everything was super sharp, and I don't mind that. But now that I shoot with an LED lamp, which allows me to have a much shallow depth of field, so the eyes are crystal sharp, the back of the hair is a bit out of focus, so it puts all the focus onto the eyes, so it makes the casting directors actually look at the most interesting part of the photograph. So yeah, if anything, it's going to be cinematic type portraits that I shoot. That seems to work.
Yeah, I mean, your style is really, like, especially your black and whites, because you do a lot of black and white work. And I have to say, I mean, this,
I love black and white.
It's stunning. Those portraits are absolutely stunning. There's just something like so.
Thank you.
It's I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's like there's something painterly about them, because the thing I like about your style is this really sort of two distinct looks. Really, I would say, like, one is your black and white look, which is very distinctive. But then also your color look is really, it's very like painterly almost, I would call that. I think that's sort of a term that's being used a lot recently, but because you always go for these like sort of almost like faded colors and it's kind of earthy tones and stuff like that. And it's that
exactly,
that in conjunction with like your choice of background as well and the lighting. And I think the first time I sent you a message, I asked you about your lighting and the way you light things, because that's, for me, I do a lot of portraits and I also do a lot of headshots. So I'm intuitively interested in how other headshot photographers light the subjects. It's one thing you always want to know, really. What kind of lens do you use and how do you light the damn thing?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I used to use Ellen Chrome. I still use Ellen Chrome lamps. It's just like the small, I can't remember what number they are, but now I got this small LED lamp, which I use, allows me to get down to a really shallow depth of field. I do shoot my color temperatures more warmer than the cool side. The actual backdrop is the one I'm using at the moment for this Zoom chat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually the back side of a hand-painted one, which it gives it a bit more of a rustic type feel.
Yeah.
But as far as cameras go now, I'm using a Panasonic Lumix S1 with a 50mm.
Mm-hmm.
And their color system is the same that they use in their RE film cameras. So it's literally shoot the photograph, take off pimples, and that's it, ready to go. It's out of camera, perfect colors for me. So it's been a bit of a struggle getting used to a new system, but now it's just second nature. So it's perfect. Shoot with 50mm and it's done. So
is that what you usually use, like a 50mm?
Yeah. For the sort of for the standard headshots, I will either use a 50mm or an 85mm on the Nikon D750. But for the Panasonic, I just have the 50mm, and it is the sharpest lens I've ever used. As far as shooting at 1.4, everything is tack sharp. It's incredible. So highly recommended camera to use. So
why did you shift from Nikon to Panasonic?
Well, I was shooting an event in town, and a guy from Panasonic was there with his S1H, which is a film camera. It's got like a built-in fan that allows you to film 6K 24/7 without overheating. So I got to use that for a couple of weeks. Then he needed to give that to someone else to test with. So then he sent through the post, the S1. He just told me to keep the lens, send the body back, and he sent me the S1 to work with. It's 24 megapixel, and there's no loss in any sharpness or detail at all. So I thought I was going to be Nikon man till the day I die. Apparently not. The I was actually quite surprised when I actually did move to Lumix. It's just the eye focus. It doesn't fail. It's great for outside portraits. It's really good in low light situation. The color for me is probably going to be one of the biggest selling points to why I moved to Lumix. It's just a very reliable camera. The only thing that is a bit of a down is the battery life. As most mirrorless cameras, the battery life isn't as good as digital SLRs, but it's not a sticking point to me at all. I have plenty of batteries, so it works.
Exactly, they're cheap too. So I'm a Lumix guy as well.
Oh, nice.
Nice. But because I primarily do video, I've got the I use the GH5S.
Nice.
At the moment, which I've had for a while, and there is something about the colors that Panasonic produce.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
The profiles that are on there for video anyway is just outstanding. They're really good. They're distinctive. You can pick them out when someone's been shot on a Lumix versus Canon, for example. I love it. I absolutely love that camera. Although I am considering switching to Sony next year.
Ooh,
they've got
the dark side.
Yeah, I know. Considering, I said considering. They've got some rumors of a new camera coming out, which kind of fits the bill. The A9 4, 5?
A9 4, yeah. I think it's A9 4.
Something like that.
I think it is. But the thing for me, the reason why I said I would only consider changing is if the system that I'm using, which is Nikon, if it stops doing what I need to do, that's when I'm going to consider changing the system. And it's just it's making my workflow a lot faster, which is better. It means I can shoot more. So
yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing I want to talk to you about. Really, is like your work is really prolific. I mean, I don't know anybody who like keeps putting up images. It's just like it just keeps coming every day, which is great. How many sessions per week do you do?
I don't. Before COVID, I was shoot maybe 6 sessions a week. I don't shoot any more than 2 sessions a day. I try to shoot 3 sessions in one day, but I don't really give a time limit on sessions. So it's like 2 to 3 hours. And if I shoot 2 sessions, that's 6 hours straight off the bat at max. So if I shoot 3, that's going to be 9 hours, and that's the last person doesn't get what the first person gets as far as my 100% effort in it. So I sort of limit it down to 2 sessions a day, but I will shoot 7 days a week. Being self-employed, I don't get paid holiday, so I have to work when the work's there, which is, I don't mind. I don't see what I do as work. It's something I find very enjoyable, very relaxing. So it can be as much as 6-7 sessions a week, which is quite good for me. So,
do you work with casting agents just generally, or?
I do. There's a couple that I do work with. There's one that is based here in Stockholm, and she has an office in London as well. There's another one that I met recently. She's based in Oslo, but she's originally from Finland. So I do work closely with them. There's one that I did work with, not directly, but it was an actress that I shot her headshot at the Actors Studio Stockholm. And a headshot that she used got noticed by a Hollywood studio, and they asked to have her in a movie, and the movie was Maleficent 2, and all her leading roles was with Angelina Jolie. So when she came back, I got her to come over for some updated headshots, even though she hadn't aged at all for the last 5 years. So it is good. It is good fun working with them. I do get some work given to me by the casting directors, so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Is it your main form of not necessarily advertising, but is that how you normally get in contact with actors, or how do you generally when you first started, how did you get your name out there?
I first started off as a lot of headshot photographers and portrait photographers. They sort of trawl Instagram around their local area, and a lot of times I started off doing like a lot of TFP. Since then, my TFP has gone right down. I only use TFP if I want to test a new lens out or test a new light out. But 90% of my customers now do come from Instagram. I'll shoot like a guy I shot today. I shot him. His friends will see the pictures. They'll get in contact with me. Their friends will see their pictures and get in contact with me. So it's very much a domino effect as far as people come to me through. And a lot of it is word of mouth as well that I do get a lot of work from. So it is good. It is good. But yeah, Instagram is my soul. If it wasn't for Instagram, I don't think I'd be working. So
cool. Do you have a particular like social media strategy, or do you just literally just post portrait images and then just let it go?
Yeah, I just basically, some people have stopped following me because I post too much sometimes. I do shoot a lot, so it's a case of I will post a lot, and my sort of frame of mind is if people see me posting a lot, they'll think that I'm in demand and want to shoot me themselves, and sometimes that does work, sometimes it doesn't, but for the most part that it does work. And it's a case of I'm just head down, run forward, and catch as much work as I can. It's quite competitive market, headshots and portraits, but I've been doing it now for quite a few years. I have got like a steady client list that do return. There's some people I've shot 6 or 7 times, which is great for me. They know where they're going to get. I know I'm going to get from them, which is, it saves the whole meeting people for the first time in the first session not being a complete hit, but the second session is so much better. So, but yeah, it's just head down and charge. Basically. So
I think that's a couple of different things to tie in there. Is that, as you say, it is a competitive market. It's quite, it can be quite saturated, which is why it's even more important to set yourself out, to stand out from all of those other portrait photographers. And you do just that. Your style is, as Kersten said, is particular, and you can scroll through and know it's your photo immediately. Yeah. That's so important, and you absolutely nail it. Absolutely nail it.
There's a thing. You mentioned Peter earlier, and of course, for those listeners who are not necessarily familiar with Peter Hurley is in the headshot world is usually regarded as sort of the headshot king, if you want. Generally, I think he created really famous style of white background type of headshot originally, which is now it's kind of known as the New York headshot style or whatever.
Exactly.
And he was also one of the early adopters of a kind of a landscape kind of a format. for headshots.
It is.
It's usually that 8x10 landscape kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Which I think nowadays, I think pretty much every like budding headshot photographer will try and emulate that style to some extent, because it's quite a striking kind of style. And then, same. I mean, exactly the same. And you want to work out, how he lights things, but nobody can ever afford Kinos, so that goes straight out the window.
No, not a chance.
Yeah,
not a chance.
Exactly. And of course, it's I think. I mean, I can speak for myself. I'm sure I'm speaking for many people. You're always on the lookout for like to create another look, and and play around with lighting and backgrounds and stuff. And that's one of the things, which is why when I look at your work, it's really like everything kind of seems to come together on that. I love the backgrounds. I love the kind of the sort of painted, like the hand painted look kind of backgrounds, and there's this texture to it. I love the colors. I have a thing for like bright colors and like full on colors sometimes, but also like that muted film look almost is really it's something really artistic about it. It's like a painting most of the time.
I mean, I think for me, it's taking me several years to actually find and adopt a look that I like. I tried the whole, 3 or 4 lights, reflectors, white background, and I was like, it's just not. If it's not capturing me, I'm not expecting anyone else to be in awe about it. So I did buy a hand-painted backdrop from Seamless Backdrops. I think they were based in Southern Ireland, Dublin, I think. And I just like the sort of as elephant type backgrounds, that hand-painted, muted, looks like an old weathered sailing ship canvas type sail.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically one day I turned this hand-painted backdrop round and it's just raw canvas. But since I shoot at different color temperatures, I can get it looking green, I can make it look brown, different types of things. So all my shots that you see on my Instagram are shot with this one here. So it's just the one color backdrop that I use. But finding my exact how I shoot just now and how I like it and how I have a consistency, it's one that I'm feeling very comfortable with. It's one that I'm not getting bored with. It's one that people are noticing, like yourselves. It's one that's casting directors are noticing, and it's sort of it's standing out amongst other photographers in Stockholm, which is good. I enjoy that. So,
the first message I remember I sent you like years ago was like, I think I just asked you like, how did you light this thing? And you just came back with, it's just one light in a softbox. In my brain, it was like, one light in a softbox? Where it cannot possibly be that easy. But it's of course when you really look at it, it's all about like not overcomplicating the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, I sort of keep that sort of way of thinking throughout everything that I do, not just in photography, but I do like people when they use 2 3 lights. The effect they can get is great, but for me, shooting actors' headshots, it's more than just how the colors look. It's more the contact that the person has with the lens, how they react to what I say and what I do. I'll only direct actors in front of the lens as much as I feel that they need to. If I over direct, they're not going to look comfortable. So for me, it is just very, very subtle gestures that I do because I want them to look as natural as possible. So there's sort of, again, method to the madness of how I shoot with one light. I want to keep it quite simple. Not everyone walks around with 2 3 lights down the street with no shadows and stuff. So I want to make them look like you would see them if they walked into a casting room. That's how they look. It does work. It'll be interesting to pick casting directors' brains in detail to see exactly what it is that really gets their attention and sort of work on that a bit more if possible. So we'll see.
What might be quite interesting is if you don't mind, Sean, is just to walk us through what a typical headshot session looks like for you. So a lot of our viewers and listeners will be, might just be getting into photography. Some of them have been doing it for many, many years. But I think it's good to hear a different take from someone who's a pro and is doing this every single day. Maybe there's a few tips that we can pick up from you.
I think for me, one of the biggest ones is shoot as much as possible. I know it's one that a lot of people say is shoot as much as possible, practice, practice, practice. But as far as me, when I first started off, I had 2 daylight bulbs, 2 shoot-through umbrellas. It was like a basic kit that probably cost, I don't know, 40, 50 pounds. It was a starter kit. And I had, my first camera was a Nikon D3000, which was 10 megapixel, was it 3 or 4 focus points? I still managed to get some good shots off of that. But when I started to have my passion started to grow for it, I got some cheaper strobes, which worked quite well, not so controllable. Then I moved up to Elinchrom. But as far as from when I meet a customer for the first time, it will generally be through Instagram or email through my website, and they'll say, okay, how do we do it? And I said, well, it's really quite straightforward. It's 2 to 3 hours session. We start off, we have a coffee, we talk a bit for like 40, 45 minutes. Then I get a couple of test shots with them standing in front of the lamp. I don't make a big deal out of shooting because that's just going to generally scare them. A lot of these actors don't like looking into cameras because that's what they're trained not to do. So for me, it's a bit of a challenge, but it is still good. And generally, like the first 10 shots you'd expect to be quite bad as far as they look, but since they're not expecting it to be the shots, there's normally generally 2 or 3 good shots out of the first 10 that can be used as actual headshots. Some people take 5 minutes to warm up in front of the camera. Some people take 4 or 5 hours to warm in front of the camera. My longest session was 8 hours, which was, she left about 1 o'clock in the morning, which was really, really long. But yeah, I don't want to stress people out in front of the camera because it'll be something that I wouldn't want to be done myself. I wouldn't like to be told to come in, right, stand on the X, smile, bang, 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 you're done, you're gone, you're out. So you generally get to feel how people are going to be during the session. You can sort of feel how it's going to go from the very first shot to the very last shot. Today's session, I shot the guy. This is the second time I shot him. It was about 5 years ago. But yeah, it's a case of I just play by. If I feel that they're getting nervous, I'll sit down, I'll make a coffee, we'll talk. I've got 2 beagles here, which they can play around if they're not allergic to them. So it's a very homely type environment studio. I shoot from my living room. I just take off the lamp, set up the backdrop, and then it's good to go. And people seem to enjoy it. So, but as far as from start to finish, I just take it like I've actually known them for a very long time, even though it's the first time I met them, because I know that it's a nerve-wracking experience. Being able to talk to them on a sort of build a sort of rapport very, very quickly. It's quite important as well. It's not essential, but if you can make a genuine connection to them, what type of music they like, what's their favorite actor, what's their favorite movie, it gets them distracted from what they're originally here for. And it does work. Distraction helps a lot. So it's like pulling a plaster off a band, you're like 1, 2, 3, pull it off. So 1, 2, pull it off. So it's a case of just trying to make them feel at ease, basically. Shoot as much as possible. Start shooting friends and family first. Then the very first person I asked on Instagram was someone who lives not too far from here. And I was quite nervous, even just typing on Instagram. My hands were shaking. I said, listen, and how I started was like saying, I think you've got a great look. Would you mind coming over for some headshots? And they asked, what's it for? The best thing is to be honest, saying, listen, I'm trying to start off a portfolio of headshots, portraits. Would you mind? 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. And it's the first few sessions that are the hardest. After that, you just build up more and more of a technique of like, well, I did this last week, I'll try this next week. And, it's quite good. And I think the sort of the key to how I shoot people so well is that I'm very much a people person. I can talk to them on a one-to-one level. Some photographers, they have very good results, but their approach to how they do it is completely different. And I want to be as human as possible when it comes to it. So
it's interesting this because when I do a headshot session, it's I totally agree. It's really all about building that connection with your your client first, and it's typically I do corporate headshots quite a lot. Oh, that's what I have done.
Yeah,
that's what I did do before until before the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, of course, most of my subjects are not really used to being in front of the lens. They are business people. They have professional careers, and typically they need the headshots for very specific purposes, like the company websites or LinkedIn or whatever it may be. And you also you're limited in terms of style. For instance, very often they require a white background because that's what's required for the website, and to fit in with the corporate identity and all that kind of jazz. And so you very often have like a bit of a brief there. And so before, just at the beginning of 2020, I actually we had a kind of long story short. We had an extension built to our house last summer 2019, and
right.
And so it's the perfect space for a home studio type of a thing. So similar to you. I kind of, I reset the room a little bit. I have a backdrop, and I set it up as a studio space, and it's great. It's actually perfect because it kind of links onto our living room, and it's a nice atmosphere. People can come in. My workstation is right there, so they can see. So I shoot tethered, and they can see the images pop up on the screen, and it's quite a relaxed sort of atmosphere and everything. And so at the beginning of 2020, I kind of thought, well, do you know what? I only live a few miles away from Pinewood Studios. There are a lot of actors around here, like West London. So really, I should actually, I should consider that, and and maybe I could get more people come to me for shoots rather than me having to go out to companies and doing shoots there. So that was my thinking in sort of January, I guess about late December, early January, this year. And so I did a similar thing where I did a lot of TFP stuff to start with.
Yeah.
And just at the crux of it, when the word of mouth started to happen, that's lockdown.
Yeah.
Lockdown.
No, it is horrible for me. It was a case of March time. I had before it sort of kicked off, I was actually quite busy. I was getting like a lot of work in. Then it was the whole code thing. Then I didn't get any work for like 6 weeks, which was horrific. But then people started to come back after it, one at a time. One person came back. That's when another one came back and said, well, okay, it's they seem to be safe. There was never really any lockdown over here as people, they weren't wearing masks. They were still traveling. But then things got more worse with this second phase of it. The work started to dry up again. And the first one that I had was a couple of weeks ago, was a model, and I said, listen, if you want, I can wear a mask. And I said, yeah, sure, okay, wear a mask. Came in, and if you've worn a mask, it gets really quite warm, and your mouth sounds muffled. You can't really hear, what they're saying or what you're saying yourself. Then she wanted me to wear rubber gloves as well, so I was wearing rubber gloves. And she was cold, so I had to close the window, turn the radiator on. So I was sweating like a madman. I was just incredibly uncomfortable. It lasted like about 45 minutes. I got some good photographs, so that's the main thing. But trying to talk through a mask, you sound a bit like Darth Vader. It's not a good sound to have. So, but but it's a case of the only time I will go out to shoot is for the actors, the studio actors. The students, and there's generally, when I first shot, there was like 37 actors that had to be shot, and it worked out like 4 or 5 minutes per student. And the first person I shot was this actress that went to Hollywood with Angelina Jolie, and I shot that one, and that was like half hour just for one person. So I got told to get a move on and shoot the rest of the students really quickly, so everyone else got like 3 minutes. Still worked. It was their sort of the first sort of semi-professional type shot they would use, so it worked good. But generally most people come to me, and Stockholm is really small, so again it's a win-win situation for me. I'm very central in Stockholm, so people don't have to get taxis and planes and whatnot. So
It's a bit like volume corporate headshots. That's I do conferences and conventions and stuff like that. Especially conferences, you often have, I don't know, I mean, sometimes hundreds of people you get to shoot, and it's literally like school photo time. Ting, ting, ting. See ya. Next. So
it very much is like that. Yeah.
It's it's a different thing. Of course, you're not really creating artistic masterpieces that way. There's like, it's like commodity photography to an extent. But
is it?
But yeah, I mean, I've always felt that working with actors is actually, for me, that's always been a lot more fun, because you can try out different things. You can sort of go a little bit more. You can go a little bit beyond, but you can actually go a lot beyond the kind of corporate headshot kind of look and stuff. So it's
absolutely. And I generally find that actors are very willing to try new stuff as opposed to doing the same stuff with every single photographer. They want to try and get as much options as possible when it comes to headshots. So I will do headshots, and I'll do like the full body type shots. But that'll be a case of what I do, which no one else does that I know of, is generally people will pay for the session and they'll pay for every single photograph that they get given.
Right.
But for me, I give them all the photographs that aren't blinkers or blurred or black frames. And the way I see it is, the more they post, the more I get seen, and the more airtime I get seen by them posting on their social media. So if I give them 3 pictures, that's only going to get shown for like 3-4 months, and that's it. But if I give them, 30, 40, 50, 60 shots, they're going to post them a lot more and a lot more regular. So people do get to see my work all the time, whether they like it or not. So,
but that's an interesting thing, because the one thing about headshot photography that's always, I don't necessarily baffled me, but one of the things I learned really early on was that the images or the shots that I think personally, as a photographer, that I think are the best ones, I guarantee you, those are not the ones that the client's going to choose. And so I very, very quickly, and I think everybody makes that mistake at the beginning, but I certainly made that. I very quickly moved away from me choosing the finals, but having the client pick them in a session. So what I tend to do now is I tend to do like a selection session at the end of the shoot, where I spend like 20 minutes or whatever, just going through the shots, making sure that the client is happy. We whittle it down, and if they, sometimes they do want to have some advice, like some professional advice, and that's all cool. But ultimately, they make the decision as to which final shots they choose.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for how I used to like give them all the low res images for them to choose. And I quickly found out, for me, that was bad, because they would, as you said, they would choose all the ones that just weren't good. They were good, but they didn't work as headshots. So now it's a case of the people that have shot with me several times, they'll say, I trust you, you choose which ones you think's best. And for me, looking as an outsider at the photographs and not them looking at themselves saying, well, my nose looks big, I don't like that picture, even though it's the best picture. So now it's a case of they will sort of listen and take my advice. I'll give them reasons why I think my selection is better than what they chose. And at the end of the day, they can choose whichever one they want to use. But I say, listen, this one here's a lot better because the eye contact, it's just, I'll shoot like a series of 5 or 6, and there's like, I'll look them on a film strip saying, I like that one, and that one. And I'll edit them and send to them, and they say, well, what about that one that didn't get chosen? I said, it's a bit lifeless. I'm sort of very direct when it comes to that. And they sort of gradually come around to see what I'm explaining to them, why it makes a good headshot, because you want it to stand out very, very quickly amongst all the other headshots. A lot of headshots are taken with their girlfriend's mobile phone. And, sometimes that's all you've got, and that's fine. But I think if you get some time and effort into having your headshots taken, it's going to come across as very professional, and that you're interested in being an actor, and you're showing a bit more initiative into what you do as an actor. So I think what I want to offer and do give is the best opportunity possible for them to further their career as an actor. So,
you think there's a difference in headshots, not only stylistically, but also in, let's say, in the way your models pose between UK headshots and Sweden, for example? Do you find there's a particular difference there?
I don't think there's a difference. I think the UK market and the Swedish market is a very European style to it. I think a lot of people sort of do want to try and emulate or see what the new fad is as far as headshots go. I think the total difference is from American headshots and European headshots. I know for a fact that if the headshots I use over here or give to people over here, they use them in the States, they don't like them at all because they're too real. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. They have actors have headshots taken by like some of the best headshots photographers in LA or New York. If they try and use them over here, they'll say they're not real, they're too fake, they're too well lit, they just come across a bit too edited, a bit too fake, even though they're great photographs, they're just not believable. So as far as UK and Swedish headshots, I think they're very, very similar as far as the style goes. And that's quite good. For me, if I sort of dominated the market in headshots, which I don't want to, because then I'm just going to get complacent and a bit lazy and a bit fed up with it. So when I do have challenges, I think it's fantastic. The biggest challenge I had was shooting a blind actress. And I can't say to her, look at that painting on the wall or look at that door frame. I had to sort of very quickly think, how can I get her to look at a specific part? You know, so I basically got my hand in front of the camera and got her to click. And each time I clicked my fingers, she looked exactly where the click was coming from. It seemed a bit strange, but I got her to look exactly where I wanted to. I can't say, move your head down 3 inches to the left, then 2 millimeters down again. It was a case of her hearing was her strongest sense. So getting her to do that was perfect. So.
Yeah. Do you shoot men and women differently? Do you have a different approach?
No, I don't actually. Not at all. And I think the first time that I did shoot the students at the actor studio, and after I finished shooting them, a group of girls came up and saying, "We really appreciate that you shot us the same way you shoot the guys." I didn't really think about it at the time, but if I start treating them differently from the men and vice versa, the images are going to look completely different. And I wanted them to have, even though there's going to be male roles and female roles, I wanted them all to have like an even playing field. You know, I want to have an equal chance of applying for a role and getting it. You know, I didn't get the girls to stand very feminine. I got them to stand with their hands in the pockets. You know, the way you would stand waiting for a bus, that's how I got them to stand, just very, very naturally. I didn't position them any differently from each other. And I think that's how the sort of the style carries through from both male and female. Not unless it's like a wedding photography that I'm doing, then that's a completely different kettle of fish. But shooting actors, I will treat them the same. And I think they sort of respect that I don't treat them any less differently or shoot them differently, because they want exactly what the men get, and why not? So yeah, it does work.
Do you direct them a lot, or do you just let them kind of do their thing?
I generally direct as much as I feel they need to. If they can come in here, and I'll sort of, as soon as they come in, I'll sort of like shake hands and hand spirits, come in, then it's a case of I'll watch them as soon as they come through the door, and I'll sort of realize before they even get in front of the camera, like this person needs to straighten their back, whatever it is. But if they come in, stand casually, look how I feel they should do, I direct as much as I feel that they need to be directed. If they need to straighten up, I'll do this. If I need them to turn the head, I'll turn the head like this here, get them to follow the nose with a finger. So it's very, very subtle movements that they need to do, especially if I tell them to like take a step forward. They'll take like a massive step forward. so now I'm saying like baby step forward, baby step back, left, right. So it's just very small gestures that I make, and a lot of it is hand gestures that I do for them. It just makes things easier for myself and for them. If they can see me do this with their head, turn this way here, it makes it so much easier rather than tilt your head to the left. I mean, your left or your right. So it just speeds things up and makes things flow a bit more faster. So, yeah.
You ever had somebody come in who's obviously looked at your Instagram and figured, you know, that's the kind of look they're after, and then you look at them and you kind of go, well, actually, that's not going to work for you. I suggest something completely radically different.
It's happened a couple of times, but I think what a lot of people generally do ask photographers to do, they'll start saying, well, I saw this style of photographer's Instagram, can you do that? Or I saw that person's, can you do this? And for me, I make it as clear as possible. You know, it's what you see is what you get. There is some people that come in and I sort of try and not talk them out because I want to give them what they want, but in certain ways, I will start saying, well, this might fit your image a bit better, you know? So it's, if they want to be really shot like that, then I'll shoot like that, but I'll say, I will sort of try and point them in a way that's more flattering for them or shows off their best side. It's small things that when people come in, they'll have their hair parted on this side or this side. I sort of generally look for that. If they have the hair parted on this side, that's generally the face they go for. If it's on this side, that's generally the side they go for. And they sort of sometimes pick the opposite side with the hair that's not parted. And I say, when as soon as they come in before they mention it, I say, that's your best side of the face there. And they say, how do you know? And they say, yeah, it is, but how do you know? I says, because you've got your hair parted on that side and it sort of opens up the face, especially for actresses. So it's generally, I haven't had too many occasions where I've had to point people in a different direction, thankfully, but a lot of people want to shoot me because they like how I shoot. So they're quite happy. I do say, what do you want to shoot like? And they'll say, I like what you shoot, just do what you do. I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
It saves a lot of hassle.
I guess if you you start going down different routes of style that may not be your style and the way that you like to shoot, ultimately you end up both being kind of, you know, dissatisfied with the results, I guess, to a certain extent, because you've not done the style that you particularly like doing or would think would work best, and you don't do it all the time. And they end up with a photograph that they may not be actually be able to use or be particularly happy with. So, you know, if you want a different style, my friend, well, this photographer's great. Yeah, go see him. Go let him. You know, it'll be better for him, and then he'll probably respect you more for saying, you know, great, I appreciate that, because that's, you know, I'm just going to get the best result.
Yeah. Well, exactly. At the end of the day, I want to, you know, a reputation. And no matter what you do, if you sort of, as soon as you sort of don't give what you want or try and sort of cover up a mistake that you've made, that can be sort of, that will get passed on to other people. Stockholm is quite small as far as the actors go. There's a lot of them, but, you know, word does travel fast. So it's a case of, you know, you have to be very honest with people, and I think it's definitely the best sort of policy for me. You know, if it's a case of, if I don't think I'm going to be able to do what they want, I'm saying, well, this person does amazing New York type portraits, try them. I've advised other people to other photographers, and photographers, they will sort of pass work on to other people if they feel that they can't offer what they're doing. So it is a very much, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. And it does work. It does work, which is good.
That was definitely one of it was a thing like before COVID, where, you know, I would get called for particular things, particular jobs that, you know, I knew I wasn't going to shoot, like food photography, for example, right? Because I know people who are, first of all, professional food photographers, and also, you know, really have a lot more expertise in that field, and so I would naturally pass that stuff on, because nobody wins if I do the shoot and screw it up, basically, and then, you know, it has a negative impact on my reputation, and also likewise, you know, what goes around comes around, right? But
absolutely.
It's a funny thing because obviously since the lockdown here, especially we had a massive lockdown over the summer, and now we're just in the second lockdown, and now it's more like anything that comes in, I'll make it work. You want me to shoot guacamole? No problem. I am the best guacamole photographer in the world. Just bring stuff over.
You come to the right place. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's How has the whole COVID thing really affected you? Because I know you mentioned it earlier. You didn't really have sort of a full-on lockdown like we've had over here in the UK. And Sweden has handled the whole thing completely differently, right?
Yeah, I mean, over here they have like a herd mentality, and the part of Stockholm, I'm in the southern part of Stockholm, and it just seems to be business as usual. There was less people traveling. I did notice that. Not many people wearing masks, which this time round there is. Out of a carriage on the train, if there was like, say, 30 people, the first time around there'd be like one person wearing a mask. Now out of 30 people, there'd be like 15, 16, 17 people wearing masks. I do carry around hand spirit wherever I go. If I go on a bus, I get off the bus, hand spirit straight away. But yeah, there's been no lockdowns. There's just been recommendations from the government, from what I understand. So there has been no full-on stay at home or we're going to arrest you type format. But it's a case of, people do need to work. So it's a case of if you work from home, you're a head photographer and people aren't allowed to come around, you're pretty much sort of down a stream without a paddle. You really are pretty hard times are coming. But hopefully that won't get to the point where they actually do force people to stay at home and just ride it out. The first time around, the part where we live, it was the least affected out of all of Stockholm. From what I believe, it was the least affected. Generally, I think because there's not so much through traffic around here. It's pieces where there's no like shops as such, where lots of people travel through. So it's people that live here are here, and the Swedish people generally keep to themselves anyway. So yeah, it's hard. It is hard, but second time round seems to be harder at the moment. But hopefully things will pick up. I know in the UK today, I think it was the first person got the vaccine in the UK today. It's going to be something I'm going to wait a year or so in case I don't drop dead or it takes vaccine if it has severe side effects. So I'm going to sort of hold my breath and use hand spirit until that time comes. So but, it is hard. People are struggling. People in the service industry, like waitresses, waiters, chefs, are losing their jobs. But there's not much you can do.
Yeah. So. I think over here, the original lockdown, version 1, April, May, June, over the summer, that was really tough. I mean, that was like literally everything was shut down. And then, of course, here in the UK, it went into this tier system for a few weeks. It didn't actually last very long, did it?
No, not really.
Just a few weeks. Very quickly, it was realized that didn't work at all. And then
no.
And before we knew it, we were back in the second lockdown.
Yeah,
and
now we're back into a tiered system. But apparently, for Christmas, no one cares, so we can do what we want over Christmas.
No. Business is open for. We're open for business for Christmas. Apparently, that's what they say. Sorry, who knows?
That's the thing. That's the thing over here. I think the amount of people that are allowed to gather for Christmas, I think the government has issued a gathering of no more than 8 people in Sweden. In Poland, I think it's 5 people. But it's tricky. It's tricky times because people just feel like they're missing out on stuff, and life is hard. It's something that you have to deal with quite fast. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to hope that it does eventually go the same way as the swine flu goes. The word deaths from the swine flu. I know people that had the swine flu and survived. I don't know any personally that has died from corona, thankfully. But we just have to get through it the best we can,
I mean, very often, a situation like this, I mean, there's opportunity within that. In fact, I mean, we said it many times on this podcast. The sole reason why we started this podcast was actually a direct result of COVID and the lockdown, because for those of you who've been listening to several of these episodes, and we mentioned it quite a lot, we found ourselves in a situation where literally virtually all of my sessions have been canceled. All of my photography jobs had been canceled, or initially postponed, and then eventually canceled to start with. And we were just on the phone or whatever, and saying like, okay, well, what are we doing now? Well, what now? So obviously we talked about this earlier. You're very active on Instagram. Have you ever thought about YouTube?
So I think for me, I would have to find a format that would allow me to give 100% whilst interact. I know some photographers just will put the camera on them, or have 2 or 3 different cameras, film in different angles from the top of their camera to the side of the studio. But I think for me, I would, if I find something that would work for me without sort of affecting the results that I get from the headshots, then I would, I think I would consider doing it. I think it would be quite good to be seen on a different platform other than just Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. So, I think the more exposure, I think the better, basically. So,
do you get more sort of response from Instagram or from Facebook generally?
For me, it is a lot. I'd say about 90% comes from Instagram. I do get some off Facebook because I do share from Instagram to Facebook. So then if people aren't on Instagram, they will see it through Facebook. So it's a small percentage that I do get from Facebook. I do get quite a lot, surprisingly enough, from the actual websites. I will get people email me from the website, which I do have listed on the Instagram. So whether they see on Instagram, then they see the website. Either way, they find me eventually, which is quite good. But a lot of the times it is word of mouth that I get contacted to shoot headshots. It is good. I know a lot of photographers that are doing sort of location shots outside, like natural light and stuff. So it's doing the whole social distance and keeping away from people. But I think YouTube would be a good fit. I think I would just have to find a method that works best for me, basically. So, but other than that, I think it'd be something worthwhile looking into. I know Peter Hurley does it amazingly. You do it very good as well, like amazingly well. But I think it's a case of once I find my niche in YouTube, as I have done with actual headshots, I think it could be quite a good marriage of the two. See people actually see how I actually work, as opposed to just to seeing the actual pictures at the end of the product. So,
well, Peter Hurley is pretty much the gold standard when it comes to totally commercializing every single aspect of headshot photography. Not only in terms of like creating a recognizable kind of style, but also, the headshot crew thing, the kind of the sort of educational part to that. And just generally, because there's he endorses a lot of products as well. That's the other thing. There are a lot of Peter Hurley branded.
He does
products.
I mean, I think when I first started for him, he was. For me, it was when he was at his best, because he was shooting with his Hasselblad camera. He didn't have any products. He was shooting with Kino Flows, whatever it was, but he had a very hands-on approach to how he talked to people, how he directed people. He was very good with his banter. He knew how to get people to laugh, how to smile naturally. He never said smile for the camera. He never said that. He just told a joke or said something about the hair or whatever it is, or told him to stop looking so glum or whatever. So as far as his style, then once he went into doing his products, I still love his stuff. It's absolutely amazing. He's starting to do dark stuff now as well, which is really good. But then there's another photographer called Jeff Rojas, which is a portrait fashion photographer, and his stuff is, I think his black and white stuff is how I sort of saw myself head in that direction. So thanks to him, my black and whites are as they are. I'll convert to black and white, then I'll use the temperature grader from warm to cold. I'll put the blue down to the blue section, so it brings out the redness in the black and white. So when you sort of see it, the skin is like a bit of a silvery type tone to it. It's very cold type look, even though it's black and white. It's a very sort of hard to describe, actually. It's not black and white. There's a bit of silverness to the skin. The blacks are black, and people have got blue eyes. The eyes will sort of pop out a bit more without actually having to edit them. So it is a very stylized black and white, but it's a black and white that I quite look the like of, So it's interesting experimenting and getting the right type that I like the look of. So,
what kind of advice would you give anybody? If anybody was thinking about starting out in actors' headshots or something, what piece of advice would you give them?
Don't despair. There's going to be people that don't like your work. Don't let that put you off. Some people are put off by the fact that that person doesn't like their photography. Keep at it. You will find a method that works for you and that you will get people to like. When I first started off, I was going to like magazine stores, looking at lots of magazines of portraits, headshots, look on the internet. So like Pinterest is a great place for inspiration, and actually finding on Instagram groups that will solely sort of focus on headshots or portraits. The reason why I like the landscape portraits is, Peter Hurley did it. I like the look of it. And with the whole portrait orientation of portraits, there's not that much room for the eye to look around the whole picture. So I do like a bit of blank space to one side. So I think it's a case of primarily shoot what you like shooting and convince people what you're doing is good. People like what they like, but they like to be told what looks good. And I think, I do it now in a kind way. I don't want to say that looks rubbish because it's just rubbish. The way I do it is the best. I'm not saying that the best of what I do, but what I'm doing seems to be working very well. But, look at as many headshots or portraits as possible. Make a folder on your desktop and make like a swatch book of headshots, and whatever stands out the most, if you pick Peter Hurley style headshots or my style headshots, and I would sort of say, go with what you like the look of. Don't try and be too inventive as far as shots go, because there's a technique to doing it, but follow what you like and try and emulate it, and try and make it your own style. I shoot with the one light. Other photographers shoot with one light, but rather than shooting at 45 degrees and 45 degrees, I'll sort of like do 35 degrees and 35 degrees, or to get the Rembrandt type light. So I'll sort of play around with that. And again, I want to make it look as natural as possible. I don't sort of have light coming from up above or from below. It just looks too much like zombie lighting. So it's a case of, if it feels good to you and it looks good to you, and you shoot that way and you keep shooting that way, you will eventually get a following of people. You will get people wanting to work with you. And it's a case of just don't give up. A lot of people do give up, and it's a shame, because some of the stuff that I have seen people do, they've stopped, and it's because they've had bad critique. I'm not really, no one likes bad critique of their work, but it's a case of, why don't you like it? I don't mind critiques, like, why don't you like it? Because of that. Okay, fair enough. I'll try and alter it without changing my style. So it's a case of just keep going. If you like it, other people are going to like it eventually. So.
The funny thing, we had one of our other guests on, Tommy Reynolds, we asked him, like, what did it feel like the first time you got like a thumbs down on your YouTube channel? What did that feel like? And he goes, interestingly, he said that was like total confirmation that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
No, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a case of, don't follow the crowd, because then you're not going to stand out from everyone else. And I had a sort of similar situation. It's like someone said, your work, they all look the same. An artist said this. An artist said, your work looks all the same. There's just nothing new about it. And it says it's called consistency. Yeah. And I said, if what I'm doing is wrong, then people are wrong for liking what looks the same. I have a look that looks similar and people like it. So it's just their opinion that they think it looks the same. But for me, consistency is good. I try and be consistent to how the headshots look. There is some variations, but for the most part, as you said, you can sort of pick out some of my headshots when they do up saying, yeah, that's Stockholm Sean, whatever it is, so it's good to have consistency in work. Don't jump from like HDR portraits to black and white and noir type stuff. You try and keep it similar from an early stage. I experimented a lot with headshots and colors and orientations, and thankfully I've seemed to have settled down into landscape portraits, and they work quite well, especially for casting. So it's good.
Well, it's definitely, but consistency is definitely the one thing, one amongst many things, but it's a very distinctive attribute of your Instagram for sure. Because you can literally scroll on forever. I try to. This is funny because one of the things I do when when we have a guest on, of course, I check out their social media and stuff, and I try. What's interesting sometimes is when you go to the very beginning of their Instagram account and you kind of see how they've developed, over the years, sort of thing. And it's like looking at your very first Facebook post from 2008 or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you compare that to like what it's like now. Back in when Facebook first started, it was like it said, like it would say your name and then it said is. Like Kersten Nuts is, and I came across my very first post the other day, and it's like Kersten Nuts is very tired right now. Stupid. Like nobody would post anything like that these days.
No.
But the thing about your account was like, so I was scrolling, and I never got to the beginning of it.
There was a lot of posts.
Which is awesome. And the thing that was really striking was that it was so totally consistent. It would just, it just looked awesome. After 3 minutes of scrolling, it just looked as awesome as it did in the beginning. It was just absolutely phenomenal. So
well, I think my very first picture on Instagram is when I lived in West Kensington. I did my Sunday laundry, and I was sitting down on the sofa with the springs were out, so I was like 3 inches off the ground. It was just like a with Neil and I type movie. And I was sort of sitting there, and I had my trusty Fuji Finepix 5600. And I took a picture of the tumble dryer. That was my very first picture on Instagram, as a picture of a tumble dryer in West Kensington.
Was it black and white?
It wasn't. It was color, actually. I wish I'd changed it black and white now. But that was my very first picture, as far as I know, was a picture of a couple of American-style tumble dryers. That was it, my very first one.
Instagram was a funny one because I tried to get my head around that early on, a few years ago. And the first thing I did was actually I figured that the story function. I think Instagram had just introduced the story function, and I figured there must be something more interesting that I can do with that rather than just taking a snap and then another snap and a bit of video. And so I thought like, oh, maybe if I actually script and film actual stories of stuff that happens and kind of almost like overproduce it and go way over the top, then it would be quite fun because 24 hours later it would be gone. So you put in all of that work, and it'd be 24 hours later, and it's just
it just disappears.
Yeah, and it's this kind of thing where if you enjoy these stories and you want to follow it or whatever, and you want to watch it, you really only have 24 hours to watch it, and then after that, it's just gone.
It just disappears. Yeah. I mean, what I try and do I sort of try and support many of the photographers that I do like the look of. I will sort of screenshot their Instagram page saying, go follow this photographer. He does great black and whites, or he does great colors, or he does amazing landscapes. I do like landscapes. It's just I have a preference for shooting people. Landscapes don't tend to smile that much in front of the camera, but I do sort of try and give other people some exposure onto it as well. I don't have that many followers, but if someone gets 3 or 4 followers from that, then fantastic. I have it done to me. People say go and check out Sean's work on Instagram, follow him, and I do get some new followers. I do get some new clients out of it. But at the end of the day, it is fun. I don't see what I do as work, and I think the day that I see it as doing work, then it's going to be quite dull, quite boring. So.
On that note, again, if you like this interview with Sean and you like the Camera Shake podcast, episode what are we on? Episode 34. Please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, just scroll down to the very bottom and leave us a little review. That'd be super awesome. You give us a little star rating. That would really help out the show. Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Totally
awesome. In fact, you were one of the first people when we first decided to do this podcast, and we decided to have guests on the show. You were one of the top names on the top of my list of people I wanted to speak to. So
but that's the thing, that there's people I've seen you interview. I'm like, oh my dear God, why am I on a podcast with people like that, Tommy Reynolds and Heather Cousins and stuff like that? I was like, have they got the right person here they want to interview? Are they sure?
Yeah, man, I tell you something. This is really this is funny because it's kind of, we interviewed last week. We interviewed Adam Lerner. Which is an episode that's coming out this Thursday. And that for me was like total fanboy time.
Oh, really?
Because, the reality is, like, people often, I get a lot of questions like this, how do you get these people to come on your podcast? And it's like, the answer is, I just ask them. It's really that simple as that. I just shoot them an email or an Instagram message or whatever and just ask them,
It's perfect.
And most of the time they say no. Sometimes, I'm lucky they say yes. But with Adam Lerner, it was one of these things, where you he just emailed me back pretty much straight away.
Were your hands shaking when you were typing the email to him?
No, it's kind of no, because I kind of almost expected him to say no. It's just like, when you, like, there's certain people, like, I don't know, if I emailed any Leibovitz or something, I'd expect not to get a response. You know what I mean? It's just, you don't think that you will.
Should we send that off tomorrow?
Yeah.
Let's email it tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Go for it.
But and then Adam just went like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. When do you want to do it? I'm like, really?
Wow. Did you just say that?
Wicked. So, but it's like, the truth of it is that, we're doing this because we talk about photography all the time, and it's just, it's awesome to speak to other people about the same thing that we talk about all the time. So it's cool.
Refreshing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the other thing is that, it's a real opportunity for us also to learn something, because you learn something every time you speak to somebody who's really good at what they're doing. You learn something new, and there hasn't been a single episode that we've made where I haven't learned something. Mm-hmm. Like, there's always something I've taken from it, and sometimes it's like something like a technique. Sometimes it's just a way of thinking, and it really does change your own approach to photography as an art form. As a sort of, as a technical thing, like I said, we've learned technical aspects. We're both not really film shooters. And talking to Adam about film photography and the way he thinks about that, and that was quite sort of eye opening. Talking to you about the way you approach your clients and models and stuff is really interesting. So there's always something. In there that will, teach us something new, and that's one of the major sort of interesting aspects. And at the same time, we get to know lots more photographers. It's great.
It is. It's good. It's sort of growing the community. 2 quick things is tips is, when you have people in front of the camera, is just to get them breathe naturally, just slow down, breathe naturally, and when they do that, things literally just slow down. You can sort of see their breathing slowing down, and just to get to be themselves. Don't try to be Tom Hiddleston if you're not Tom Hiddleston. Be yourself, breathe slowly, and just be normal. And that works so well. So well. So yeah.
I think Tom Hiddleston went to school next to me. Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
I think you did. Yes,
yeah,
I think
pretty sure he went to Eton.
Yeah, that's true. Cool. Well, are you planning on coming to the UK at some point?
At some point, I want to. I do have quite a few actors that have moved to London. A lot of Swedish actors have moved to London, so it would be quite good to sort of do a bit of a tour of London, shoot some people I'm over there. Probably meet up with you guys as well, which would be a lot of fun. But yeah, I do plan to come over, but we'll see how the whole COVID thing pans out first.
Yeah.
Let's talk again next year.
Yeah, well,
absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely.
With masks on this time as well.
Cool, awesome. Sean,
I'll tell you what. What we do have to do is tie that in with. We want to do a big party.
Yeah.
At some point, with all of our guests that we've had on, episode 100 sort of territory.
Oh, fantastic!
So, in like 66 weeks
from now. Yeah, true.
Is that right? Is my maths right there?
Well, it would be. Yeah. Yeah, so that's our plan.
Yeah.
It's episode 100 is going to be one massive party.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm up for that. Definitely.
Wicked, man.
I'll get the absolute vodka out.
Hey.
Oh.
The way to go.
Maybe we should bring this to episode 35.
Oh man, I know it'd be like Daniel with his like craft beer.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, let's go. Yeah. Wicked. Right, Sean, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Likewise. Nice meeting, speaking to you.
Absolutely, totally, and sure, I'll be following your headshot work on Instagram, much. And great, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Take care and be safe, and we'll speak soon.
And we'll speak soon, man.
All right.
Take it easy. Thanks very much, Sean.
Bye-bye.
Bye.